May 19th, 1536. The sky over London wakes colorless. Inside the tower's courtyard, a scaffold rests low to the ground. It is not made for spectacle. It is made for silence. The executioner waits, a sword by his side, not an axe. Anne Boleyn wakes alone. For 17 days, her world has shrunk to stone walls and prayers. At 35, she still carries the grace that once changed a nation, but today she will die. Her fingers do not shake. She chooses a dark gray cloak lined with fur. Beneath it, a crimson bodice. The color of royalty and blood. The color that will hide her final stain. Her ladies help her dress. No one speaks. She touches her throat and smiles. "I have a little neck," she says softly. Her voice is steady, even playful. Witnesses will never forget it. It is wit sharpened into defiance. Once, Anne had said no to a king. She would not be mistress, only queen. 7 years of pursuit followed. 7 years of war with the Pope, with tradition, with the soul of England itself. For Anne, a crown was the price of her body. When she finally became queen, she bore him a daughter. Not the son he wanted, but the girl who would become Elizabeth the Great. To Henry, that child was failure. To history, she was a revolution waiting to grow, and bled for her crown. 3 pregnancies lost, one of them a boy. To the king, these were not tragedies. They were betrayals. As her body failed him, so too did his love. And the court began to whisper. Thomas Cromwell sharpened his knife with rumors. Adultery, incest, treason. The queen would not go quietly. She would be buried beneath lies. Her enemies did not need proof, only permission. May 2nd, 1536. Anne is taken to the Tower, the same place where kings are crowned. Now it becomes her cage. She walks through the gate knowing she will not leave alive. They call it a trial, but no one listens. Anne is not allowed to speak to her accusers, not allowed a defense. Yet when she stands, she speaks like a queen. She answered like an angel, one witness will say. But angels do not sway verdicts. The sentence is death by fire, a punishment reserved for the most shameful traitors. But Henry changes it, not out of love, not out of mercy. A clean sword, he says, from France. It will be quicker, less mess, and is told the execution will be at 8 o'clock in the morning. She prepares her soul, she prays, she weeps quietly. But at the hour of her death, they delay it until noon. A cruel pause, a final test. She takes communion with steady hands. Her lips move in whispers. "Lord, have mercy." Then she stops, swears on the sacred host. "I have never betrayed the king." Her voice does not shake. Truth gives it weight. She gathers the few who remain, her ladies, her friends, her shadows. To each she gives a gift, a handkerchief, a jewel, a book. "Remember me," she says, and how I end. They do not answer, they only cry. The crowd is small, the mood smaller. No jeers, no delight, only silence. 1,000 eyes watch as Anne walks forward in gray and red, like a ghost refusing to fade. She walks with pride. The wind does not touch her. She is allowed final words. She does not curse. She does not cry. She praises the king, calls him merciful, calls him good. Every word is a shield for Elizabeth, for the Boleyn name. Anne dies a queen, not a rebel. She takes off her mantle, hands it to her ladies. She removes her cap, kneels. No block awaits her, only air. A blindfold covers her eyes. She trembles, but only from the cold. The Frenchman speaks. "Where is my sword?" he says, softly, kindly. She turns her head, not in fear, but in instinct. The blade is already raised. It sings once through the air. One strike, that is all. Her head falls. Her lips still form the words, "Lord, have mercy." The crowd gasps. But there is no applause. Only breath held too long. A cannon fires. Far off, in Whitehall, Henry hears it. It is done. He is free. That same day, he becomes engaged to Jane Seymour. 10 days later, they are married. Her ladies gather what remains. There is no coffin, no silk, no care. They find an arrow chest, empty and wooden. They place her body inside, her head beside her. A queen folded into a box meant for weapons. She is taken to the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, inside the tower. There is no procession, no mourning bell, just quiet feet on stone and the weight of a body that once shook a kingdom. The burial is hasty. No tomb, no name carved in marble, no crown above her head, only stone above her bones. She becomes part of the floor, walked on, forgotten. Henry orders her portraits destroyed, her emblems removed, her name scratched from scrolls and speeches, as if she had never lived, as if love could be undone with ink and silence. It is not enough to kill her body. He wants to kill memory. Damnatio memoriae, the ancient curse, the erasure of a name, a soul, a history. For a time it works. She becomes a whisper, but whispers grow. In secret, some preserve her letters. Some hold on to her likeness. They remember her mind, her fire, her fight. They say her daughter has her eyes. 23 years pass. Then the daughter Henry, dismissed, becomes queen. Elizabeth I. She does not flinch. She rules with iron wrapped in velvet. The child of the woman they tried to erase, Elizabeth adopts the white falcon, Anne's emblem. She never speaks her mother's name, but everyone sees the echo. Anne walks again, in the silence between Elizabeth's words. Elizabeth never marries. She wears the crown alone. She says she is wed to England, but some say she carries her mother's ghost. Always reminding, always warning. Anne's final triumph is this: she was not restored, but surpassed. Through the daughter they scorned, through the legacy they tried to bury in an arrow chest. In 1876, the floor of the chapel is lifted during restoration. Beneath the cold stone, bones are found, fragile, feminine. A small skull, a narrow frame, silent testimony. Scholars believe it is her. Anne, the queen with the little neck. There is no crown in the grave, no silk, no gold. Only time and dust and the bones of a woman England tried to forget. She is reburied with more dignity this time, a small plaque, a name no longer anonymous, but still surrounded by the dead of the tower, still without the honors due to a queen. Each year, on May 19th, people return. They place white roses where she died. Quiet offerings, no speeches, no guards, just flowers and memory. They do not come to honor a queen. They come to honor a woman who stood alone, who spoke carefully, who died with grace while the world trembled. To many, Anne Boleyn is no longer just history. She is a symbol of injustice, of political cruelty, of what it means to be dangerous while female. She was condemned not because she was guilty, but because she mattered, because her voice carried, because she dared to hold the crown and not bow her head. Anne's story is retold again and again, in books, in films, in lectures, and poems. But behind every retelling is a beating heart that once believed she could change the world. She did, not with a sword or army, but with will, with words, with love that defied rules, and with a daughter who would burn brighter than any king. The final irony is this: Henry tried to erase her, and yet centuries later, it is Anne we remember. Not the man who killed her, but the woman who walked to the scaffold and never looked back, and was born into ambition. Her father, Thomas Boleyn, was a skilled diplomat. Her mother, Elizabeth Howard, came from nobility. From the start, Anne was raised to rise. She spent her youth in the courts of Europe, first the Netherlands, then France. There she learned grace, languages, music, wit. She absorbed the Renaissance like ink on parchment. When she returned to England, they called her odd. Not beautiful in the traditional sense, dark eyes, olive skin, a fire that didn't fit the mold. But men turned when she spoke. She refused to be used. Her sister Mary had already warmed the king's bed. But Anne saw more. She wanted more. Not a whisper in the dark, but a place at the table. Henry chased her for years. She made him wait. She made him fight. It was not lust, it was power. And when he broke with Rome, it wasn't just for love. It was for her. The court turned upside down. Cardinals lost their hats. Friends became enemies. England bent to a new religion because a woman demanded a crown or nothing at all. When they married, Anne was already pregnant. The stakes were high. She walked the halls of power with her head high, but behind her, shadows gathered. After Elizabeth's birth, the palace dimmed. Henry frowned more. Anne miscarried, and again, she wept alone. And every silence in court grew louder. Each miscarriage became a stone in her pocket, dragging her down. Her enemies smiled in corners. Henry began to look away, and Anne knew. Queens fall fastest when they fail to bleed sons. Whispers turned into daggers. Cromwell, once her ally, saw the tides shift. He aligned with Jane Seymour's family. Anne was now the problem to be removed. The plan was swift and brutal. Charges were fabricated: adultery, incest, treason. Names were chosen: musicians, courtiers, even her own brother George. On May 2nd, Anne was arrested. No chance to flee, no chance to speak to Henry. She was taken to the Tower in daylight, past the crowds who once cheered her. She asked if the charges were real. No one answered. She looked toward the White Tower, where kings once celebrated. Now she would die beneath its shadow. The men accused with her were tortured. Some confessed under pain. Others stayed silent. It didn't matter. The script was already written. Her trial, on May 15th, was a theater of cruelty. A court of lords, most of whom had once bowed before her. Now they turned their eyes away. Anne stood alone. No lawyer, no witness. Just her voice, and she used it. Calm, sharp, proud. She made them uneasy. She reminded them of the crown they had once obeyed. But justice was not the goal. The verdict had been decided before she entered. Guilty. Death. They sentenced her to burn, then changed it to beheading. A kindness, they called it. The executioner was summoned from Calais, a man known for skill. He would use a sword. It was meant to be clean, quick, and quiet, the opposite of her life. While waiting for the sword from France, Anne remained in her chamber. Time crawled. Every hour was a weight pressing on her chest. She wrote letters, some say to Henry, some to her daughter. None survive, but the ink on her fingers was smudged, as if written with tears. She confessed nothing. She prayed often. She laughed sometimes. Her ladies said she seemed at peace, but only when she thought no one was watching did her hands tremble. On May 18th, she prepared for death. She slept little. She sang hymns. She forgave. She folded her garments with care, as if still holding court. That night, thunder rolled across the sky. Some said it was the heavens grieving. Others said it was judgment. Anne said nothing. She only closed her eyes and whispered to God. At dawn, she rose before the sun. Her ladies braided her hair. They wept. She did not. She thanked them for their service. "Do not be afraid," she said. "I am not." At 8 a.m. she was ready. Then the word came. Postponed. Noon instead. No explanation. Just more hours to sit, to wait, to unravel. She spent those hours in prayer and silence and more prayer. She repeated, "Jesus, receive my soul." It became her heartbeat, her armor. When noon struck, she stood, not like a prisoner, but like a queen. She turned to her ladies and said, "Let us do this calmly." The room froze. They followed her. Outside, the crowd stood hushed. There were no cheers, no jeers, just eyes watching, hoping she might disappear, hoping she might fly. Anne stepped onto the scaffold with steady feet. The boards did not creak. The wind did not blow. Time itself seemed to pause. She looked at the crowd, not in fear, but with clarity. She saw their sorrow, their shame, She forgave them with her eyes. The executioner waited silently, his sword hidden behind his back. Anne stood alone in the center, her gray and crimson gown catching the last of the light. She asked permission to speak. They granted it. Her voice rang soft and clear. "Good Christian people, I come here to die according to the law." She did not cry. She did not accuse. She did not name names. She praised the king, called him gentle, called him merciful, and in doing so preserved her daughter's future. Every word was a blade of its own, cutting through fear, through shame, through history. She knew the ears listening belonged to more than just the crowd. She handed her cape to her lady, then her cap. She knelt, folding herself like a prayer. There was no block. She would not rest her head, only bow it. Her lady blindfolded her. Anne whispered, "Lord, into your hands I commend my spirit." Her lips kept moving, forming the words, until the end. The executioner stepped forward. "Where's my sword?" he said aloud, a practiced kindness to distract her. She turned slightly toward the sound. The blade flashed once. No scream, no struggle, just silence and the fall of a queen. The head rolled gently onto the straw. The lips still whispered. A hush fell over the courtyard. No applause, no cheers, only the soft sound of wind brushing through fabric and grief too stunned to speak. The executioner lifted her head by the hair. "So perish the king's enemies," he declared, but the words fell flat. The crowd did not respond. Even they knew she was no enemy. A cannon boomed from the tower walls. It echoed across the Thames. In Whitehall, Henry heard it and smiled. Anne was gone. The path was clear. His wedding to Jane Seymour could now proceed. Her body lay on the scaffold, cooling in silence. Her lady stepped forward, trembling, and gathered the pieces. They wept but did not wail. Queens are buried quietly. They searched for a coffin but found none. In the armory, someone fetched an old chest once used for arrows. Anne was placed inside, her head tucked beside her shoulders, dignity forgotten. They carried her to St. Peter ad Vencula. The chapel was cold, hidden within the tower walls. No mass, no procession, just hurried footsteps and grief and whispers. They lowered her into a shallow grave beneath the chapel floor. No name marked it. No stone claimed it. She became part of the ground, folded into darkness. Henry issued new orders. All portraits of Anne were to be destroyed, her family's crest removed, her name struck from official records. History would obey, but history has memory, memory stronger than royal command. Anne's image, though erased from canvas, remained in the minds of her ladies, her child, and the silent watchers in court. Years passed. Then decades. Anne's name was whispered in corners, written between lines, kept alive by those who refused to forget. In 1558, the daughter she had died for ascended the throne. Elizabeth I, Anne's living legacy, claimed England not just with her crown, but with her mother's fire. Elizabeth never married. She ruled alone. She adopted Anne's emblem, the white falcon, as if to say, "My mother still soars." She rebuilt the nation her father had broken. She brought stability, strength, and glory. A golden age rose from the ashes of Anne's execution. Yet Elizabeth never publicly spoke of Anne. She carried her quietly, like a secret wound. But her actions were louder than grief. Anne had been called a heretic, a traitor, a witch. But through Elizabeth, she became a queen eternal. Her death gave birth to an empire. In 1876, workers restoring the chapel found bones beneath the floor. Delicate, small, with a narrow skull. They believed it was Anne. This time, she was reburied with dignity, a plaque placed, a name remembered, no longer hidden, no longer silenced. Each year, on May 19th, white roses are left where she died, not by royalty, not by decree, but by ordinary people who still believe in her story. Anne Boleyn did not die in vain. She died for a daughter, for a crown, for an England that would one day call her name with pride. And though they tried to erase her, in the end it was Anne, not Henry, who left a legacy that still lives, breathes, and rules.